briefly what you're working on or what has been the focus of your work. I know we do have a couple of copies here to come and browse through. There are two books from Jen Latham, who we had invited to speak on the panel. She couldn't come. So two of her novels are here. They're young adult novels. John Bressie has his Spirit Photographer novel here. And Heather has The Optimistic Decade. And Joe has two books available. Are these available in the bookstore?
There's like 3 of each of ours in the bookstore.
Okay.
So go early. Don't miss out.
And the bookstore here is down near the train station now. I haven't found my way there yet.
It's in the inn.
It's at the inn. Okay. It's open till 7 p.m.
Thank you, Shanalina.
So I believe Joe has 2 books there.
Yeah.
So
The Delivery Man and Carousel
they
Court.
haven't sold already. I mean,
If they
what-
haven't, I don't know, but you
My
can
mom
always
was just in
find.
there.
Yeah.
Still
Yeah.
buying it.
And then Nathan is gonna be with us to talk about his film, but then he's gonna run over to his opening at the Living Gallery.
Woo!
Dallas is fun for me to have here. She gave my sister her start in film. She was at Big Mouth Productions, and that was a great thing for her. So thank you. And then Shanalina is up from Georgia and worked in television.
Georgia in the house.
All sorts of stuff. So Shanalina also volunteered to moderate today. So again, once we kind of we'll just go down and do just brief self-introductions and who you are, and then we'll let Shanalina lead with some questions. And of course, I do believe that all our panelists in true Swati style would welcome questions and feedback from all of you. So.
And we're expecting hecklers.
Yes.
Of course. Questions of
So
artists.
thank you. And there are more seats available in the front.
Good to see everybody. Any of you know I've been writing forever. I was writing while I was here. I started out writing a children's book while I was here. Then I wrote a novel, and then I wrote another one, and then I wrote another one. So those 3 never went anywhere. And then finally, 23 years later, my agent sold this book. I was just telling some folks, I got my agent shortly after SWAT, maybe 2 years, and he's been with me for 20 years. And he has really believed in me all that time through all those books, which were all very different. One was kind of an Anne Ricey horror book, and then
It was good.
It was good. Sanders read all of them.
They're really good.
Sanders read the manuscripts for all of them. Another one was sort of a legal, actually a true crime book that I was involved. I was sort of covering a murder case as a journalist after school, and turned it into a book, and then turned it into a novel because it wasn't working as a nonfiction, and we couldn't sell that either. And then there was a family memoir. So all very different, but he's believed in me through all of those. And then I was writing on Dickens through my academic work, and then somehow wound up with this book about spirit photography in the United States. But we can talk more about it. But that's kind of my story of how we got to this.
So I'm Heather. Hi, nice to see everyone. It's so weird to be back. You all look great.
It's our first time back.
It's my first time back since the day after graduation.
Woo!
So this is like I feel like we're just a big dream, like a good dream. But, yeah, I know. I should have come back. So I worked as a journalist after college. I did environmental journalism. Hi, Ingrid. There she is. And that was, I worked in California and I worked in Colorado, and I covered all sorts of different environmental justice issues. And after a while, I realized I wanted to write fiction, but I felt really conflicted, which I'm sure is common feeling. And I did an MFA in fiction, and I ended up writing this book, which is in part about sort of dealing with the shift from idealism to disillusionment, and maybe back again, and also about my time in the West and class conflict and cultural conflict there. And this book, so I kept working as a journalist and essayist and teaching, and this book, it's called The Optimistic Decade, and it took me a pretty much an optimistic decade to write. And now I'm working on the next one, which I hope is quicker.
to a decade on my project right now, which is just found a distributor for a documentary I've been working on for 8 years called Art and Belief, which chronicles sort of a lot of my journey which started as an oil painter, which I'm still doing, which is, you can see my work over at the List Gallery, as Katie said. But through that process, I am a narrative oil painter, and my paintings are a lot about what I'm wrestling with and thinking about, and often contemporary social issues, and so they're big sellers. Which is why I went into the art business. But through that, part of what I was wrestling with, and most of you knew me as Nathan, this Mormon kid from Salt Lake City. So some of what I was wrestling with was how to come to terms with being a creative, artistic person in this very restrictive community. And I ended up moving back to Salt Lake because my wife was hired by the Olympics. So we ended up moving back to Salt Lake. And so this film came out of that, looking to some of my mentors and asking them questions about how they had managed to find a balance between their art and their faith. And so it's about a gay Mormon artist from British Rhodesia who moved to Salt Lake to create what he hoped would become a Mormon Vatican. He wanted it to be this place of tremendous beauty. And then his artist community, which helped him to come out as gay, and which meant he lost his family, was kicked out of the church, and then his sort of reconciling all of this. So it's a pretty incredible story, and so it's been amazing to be part of telling that story, and then continuing to be a working painter alongside that. So.
I'm Joe McGinnis, and I came to writing fiction pretty late in the game, unlike some of the others who were knew from the beginning that that's what they were going to do and were at it. I was into politics and policy. I majored in political science here. I was such a political geek that it was fun to be like in McCabe, down in the stacks in the lower level where they had the American political stuff, and I would get down there and I'd read about campaigns from this George McGovern's campaign and why didn't he do better, and that was fun for me. So I would get down there.
We get you.
Oh yeah. So, yeah, that's why. Safe space. All right. Well, we'll see. We're just getting started. Okay. But then, of course, I, like most people, became cynical and burned out early because I was just realizing that, wow, this isn't really going anywhere. Not a lot has changed. I was in D.C. Every summer doing internships for the Rainbow Coalition, for the Democratic Party, doing something, and then there was the Clinton. I interned in the White House for Clinton, and then I was deep in it. And then I was in grad school at AU for public policy, which was, oh my Lord. I gotta tell you, I'm still paying off the debt. I'm not using the degree that I did finally earn. Every semester was a running joke with my now wife and former Swarthmore graduate, Janine Ford. I can't do this. I can't keep doing it. This is mindless. I can't stand it. It's not worth it. But then I would get more money from the government or loans and just accrue debt, all the while getting through the days writing what I thought was a novel. And I was like, well, this is getting me through the days. I'm financing this dream. And of course I felt like what I was writing was just magic. It was gold, my God. And it was so easy. It just came so easily. Oh, page after page, just drink some coffee, turn on the music, write all morning. Look at this is gold. A decade later, I finally got some luck and got representation, and then it sold. And then a pessimistic decade later, not so optimistic. I came out with a second novel. That was 2 years ago. And I have just sent my third partial draft to my agent, and I'm waiting for word back from her, see if it's any good or more like the first. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Dallas. This is so fun. Is this what college was like? We just sat around and talked about ourselves all day long. Right, yeah, it's great. So I'm a documentary producer. I live in New York. I've been producing documentaries for 20 years, 21 years maybe. And it's kind of a fun adventure. Every project you dive into something brand new. So I actually never counted how many films I produced, but I think it's like 10, 15, maybe 20. I don't think so. I think it's like 10 or 15. But I love it. It's a great way to jump into something that you don't know anything about. You meet fascinating people. You go on the ride that takes you sometimes a year, sometimes 8 years. I've worked on an 8-year project as well. And you don't know, you think you know where it's gonna go, but you generally don't. And then you learn a lot in the process, and hopefully you tell some good stories that mean something to people on the other end. And so I've had the great fortune of doing feature docs and shorts and series, and I don't know, I mean, people don't want to hear the titles of things.
They do. Okay, we want to hear it.
We do.
I worked with Maggie, with Katie's sister, on a great project about Election Day in America. We sent crews around the country and filmed what Election Day looks like and feels like for different Americans in all walks of life in 2004. Jesus, yeah, that's a long time ago. I did a great project that was really amazing about, it was amazing because I did it, but it was amazing for me to be a part of it. I learned so much. About the governor of Illinois who recanted all the death penalties in the state, and that was a really exciting project to work on, and it's kind of had an interesting long tail that may come back for a subsequent chapter. And we got to go on the full ride of going to Sundance and making a big sale, and that was like an really fun, yay moment. Last year I worked on a project I loved called The Fourth Estate. It was a series for Showtime that followed the New York Times covering Trump's first year. And so we were embedded for 120 days in the New York Times DC Bureau, which was pretty awesome. And I'm working on a wrongful conviction series right now for Netflix.
Hi guys, my name is Shawnalina. One of 12 or 13 theater students from out here. I made the segue to film and television because my family moved to Wilmington, North Carolina, and theater was all voluntary, and I had to pay small for it back. So, I work in film and television as an assistant director. I've worked on shows, I guess, beginning with like The Wire. I did Sopranos, I did The Game. The latest movies I worked on are The Darkest Minds and The Hate You Give, which came out last year. About 3 years ago, I had sort of that aha moment of why am I working on these things that I don't particularly watch or care about. And I think the sort of sophomore sentimentality kicked in, going, okay, I care about the world. Why am I not doing projects that reflect that? So about 3 years ago, I started doing short films. Competing in like Easter Seals Disability Film Challenges. I have a nephew who's on the autism spectrum, and one day he came to me and said, "Hey Auntie, I wish I had a platform that I could talk to other people or other kids like myself, so that they wouldn't feel so alone." He's on the autism spectrum, but he also has something called optic dysplasia, and we kind of consider his disabilities like a hidden disability. You'd never know if he had any disabilities whatsoever. He's blind in one eye, and we often forget about that. So even when we did the first challenge, and I was looking for other actors who had disabilities, because it's the Easter Seals Disability Film Challenge, and I said, "Mikkel, are you going to be okay?" He's about 10 at this point, and he goes, "What do you mean I am one of them?" You know what I mean? Like I had totally forgotten the whole disability thing. And it brings up a whole different conversation I was having with someone the other night about labels that we put on people even while we're trying to eradicate the labels. It's like it's hard to figure out how to still talk about these things. But that sort of brings me around to our first question.
See how she did that?
Which is sloth